Federal Reserve has become obsolete. Over the past few years, if not more, the Federal Reserve has demonstrated it isn't up to the challenges of the financial markets of the 21st century. The Federal Reserve has or had the regulatory power to head off the worst excesses of the markets in 1999 and 2006, but it chose not to act. And why not? Why didn't the Fed take even the easiest steps to stave off not one, but two bubbles? Here's the simplest explanation. The Federal Reserve stayed rooted to the sidelines because the Federal Reserve, while still capable of technical innovation, is bound by its history and its very DNA to the financial world of the past. And that wouldn't be so bad, except that the world is facing the need to invent a new global financial system quickly, and it needs the help and leadership of the United States. And here are 5 reasons the Federal Reserve needs an overhaul. The Fed failed to use its power to set margin rates for stock trading in the run-up to the bursting of the 2000 bubble. Perhaps it might not have stopped the bubble, but it would have been a good place to start. And requiring buyers to put up more cash to purchase shares would have sent a message to the stock market more clearly than then Chairman Alan Greenspan's musings about whether it was better for the Fed to deflate a bubble or clean up afterward. And unlike raising interest rates across the board, raising rates on stock market margin loans wouldn't have tanked the general economy either. So the Fed failed to use its power to raise reserve requirements for banks in the run-up to the bursting of the bubble in 2007. That would have taken money out of the market for mortgage-backed securities and other derivatives based on buyout loans, commercial real estate, among others. And at the least, an increase in reserve levels would have meant the banks would have gone into the bust with more capital. The Federal Reserve also could have moved to restrict or ban the off-balance sheet financial vehicles by letting banks claim that these vehicles for loading up on debt weren't really part of the bank itself. The Fed let banks load up on leverage. The Fed is supposed to care more about the soundness of the system as a whole than about picking winners and losers. But court papers and the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy case show that on September 15th and September 16th, after declining to rescue Lehman Brothers, the Fed lent a Lehman subsidiary $138 billion so that the subsidiary, Lehman's broker-dealer business, could wind down tens of thousands of trades with other Wall Street companies in an orderly fashion. Somewhat odd, since at the time both the Treasury and the Fed were saying publicly that they didn't have a legal authority to lend money to the Lehman Brothers on exactly the same kind of collateral that backed the loan to the subsidiary. It appears that the Fed found it could move when the profits of other Wall Street companies were at stake, and the Federal Reserve is supposed to be an impartial regulator of the financial markets, not a covert protector of strong institutions at the expense of weak ones. By compromising its impartiality, the Federal Reserve is also compromising its ability to lead an effort to build a new global financial system. That is what is needed. What will the Federal Reserve do to fight the recession now interest rates are at 0%. It will print so much money if banks have to lend, which could mean big inflation coming. Or the banks, well, they're not really lending money yet. It's based on a fear psychology. Contrast the Federal Reserve's do-nothing approach to the latest financial bubble with the actions taken by the Central Bank of Spain. First, the Bank of Spain made it so expensive for Spanish banks to set up off-balance sheet leverage vehicles that few Spanish banks did. And as a result, Spanish banks went into this crisis with less leverage. And second, the Bank of Spain required banks to put aside extra reserves during good years. So by raising reserve requirements when profits were high and bad loans were low, the central bank got Spain's banks in position for the down cycle. The two actions have helped Spain with this crisis better than most countries, but this is a worldwide financial crisis. The new global financial system needs new thinking, brand new thinking, but instead we've got a Federal Reserve headed by an expert in the Fed's own history. It's good that Chairman Ben Bernanke is determined not to repeat the Fed's mistakes of 1929. But this is not 1929. A new financial system is needed, quickly, rapidly. So we're left with a Fed that is very, very good at the technical details of managing the money supply and the techniques of non-traditional stimulus, but is, by nature or by reflex, reluctant to take on the financial markets or the big powers that dominate those markets. So we're left with a Federal Reserve that defines its mission very narrowly, and it doesn't even want to use the powers it has. And it's a Federal Reserve that isn't going to give the U.S. the financial markets we need. And that's a huge problem at a time when financial products are one of the most promising areas, or could be, of U.S. exports. We're in danger of losing that, or frittering away a huge competitive advantage because we can't keep our financial house in anything resembling order whatsoever. And it's a Federal Reserve that isn't going to provide the world with the leadership it needs if we're going to build a financial system that can accommodate the speedy growth of China and the rest of the developing world, and recycle the oil dollars of Saudi Arabia and Russia, and provide the capital for a transformation of the world's energy industry. Yes, we need a new financial system. And Thomas Jefferson argued that in a democracy, no generation should have the power to bind future generations, especially the obligations on such magnitude that we are binding them to today. It's way past time for current generations to declare the Federal Reserve in its current form a failure and create an institution for the 21st century. It's time for something else. It's time for something brand new. New beginning, or new beginnings. And all these things are connected to one another, or to each other, which is connected to the end times transition days. There are new beginnings coming, and there are many, many signs. They are all around us.